I do not fear police officers. However, if I am in the middle of robbing a bank and I look out the window and I see a cop car drive by, I fear that officer. I do not fear state troopers. However, if I'm speeding, once I pass them, I'm fearing that they're gonna pull out and pull me over. Of course, you can puppy-proof for the rest of your life until your dog is 15 years old and passes away, but I don't know about you guys, I wanna get to a point where I don't have to be so, oh, don't leave that out, and make sure your Christmas tree is hung upside. I'm seeing these things on Facebook now. Turn your Christmas tree upside down and you hang it, or you just shave the top half so that the dog can't pull it down. It's like, what if you just trained the dog and you taught the dog rules? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as they're not running around fearing you, they understand that you're just a person that enforces the law. That's it. Just don't break the law and you have nothing to fear. Hey guys, I'm Blake Rodriguez with Dream Come True Canine, and on this episode of Blake's Takes, where I give you my take on all things dog training in the pet dog world, we're gonna talk about fear. Does it have a place in dog training, if at all? As usual, I'm trying to come at you guys with interesting, unique topics, and I think this is a really important one that doesn't get spoken about enough, sounds really bad, and you guys are gonna call me crazy, but I believe that fear in dog training is actually not as bad as the majority of us believe that it is. Don't worry, I'll explain. When we talk about fear, a lot of times fear in general is just seen as a super bad thing, because in the rare situations where it's spoken about in such a negative way where you should never have your dog fear you, and if you're operating within fear, the dog is just being compliant because the dog is afraid of you, and fear is seen in that light. And obviously I am 100% on board with believing that you shouldn't leverage fear in a way where it is the absolute only reason why a dog is listening to you and the only reason why a dog is being compliant. Like that's not the direction at all that I want to head with this. However, we often don't realize that we're making a lot of choices based out of fear. Now, that doesn't mean that we're traumatized by it or crippled by it, but it tends to be a really high percentage of one of the things that sways us to make decisions. If I get fired, I am going to fear that I cannot pay rent, so it's going to motivate me to go ahead and find a new job or find a way to make money, right? I fear that if I stay up really late and I have to get up early, when my alarm clock goes off, I go, oh, I'm tired. I really don't want to get up right now. I get up because I fear losing my job or losing the clients or not setting an example or something like that. We do this all the time. You understand when you have a flight to catch that if it's international and you're not there early, you fear missing your flight, because the consequences of missing the flight is that you might not get a flight later that day, or you're gonna have to pay extra money to change your ticket or something. I know that if I'm on my way to my friend's house with a couple of buddies and he's talking about really cooking us all dinner, he's super excited, and as we're walking there, we pass by one of the Iron Chef restaurants and it smells from the outside phenomenal. When we smell that, oh my gosh, and a lack of impulse control, we go ahead and we sit down and we have dinner. Most of us probably wouldn't make that decision for fear of a number of things. If your friend's a physical individual, you might not make that decision out of fear that he might kick your ass. Maybe that's your wife that's cooking or something like that. Then maybe you fear it a little bit more. Sometimes it's the fear of hurting your friend because your friend was super excited to make this meal for you and you know how important it was. And you went ahead and you did something and you know they're very emotional, it's gonna hurt their feelings, or it's gonna be a really big deal. Fear of possibly jeopardizing that friendship. When it comes to fear in dog training, I believe that there is a major difference between a dog fearing you in everyday life and situations, and you're getting compliance and you're striving to get compliance with fear, that's something that I 100% do not believe in, and that's something that I am not advocating for at all. However, I believe there's a huge difference between that and having a dog fear you if they've broke a rule that they are aware that they shouldn't have done or shouldn't be doing. And some people might not agree with that off the bat. I get it. But it's important to understand that that's how it works for us as well. Law enforcement. Now let's assume we're not talking about crooked cops. Let's assume we're talking about good police officers. I do not fear police officers. However, if I am in the middle of robbing a bank and I look out the window and I see a cop car drive by, I fear that officer. I do not fear state troopers. However, if I'm speeding, sometimes even if I'm not speeding, once I pass them, I'm fearing that they're gonna pull out and pull me over. So when it comes down to it, a lot of us fear individuals that enforce the law when we're in a situation when we know we're not abiding by it. And we've already spoken about this. It's one thing to teach it. It's another thing to teach a dog what happens when they don't follow it, once they're fully aware of how to follow the rules. They need to understand the consequences for that. And if a dog does not fear you after you've taught, that can be a very dangerous behavior when they go ahead and they run into the street. When you tell them not to eat stuff on the table, and maybe of course you can puppy proof for the rest of your life until your dog is 15 years old and passes away. But I don't know about you guys. I want to get to a point where I don't have to be so, oh, don't leave that out, and make sure your Christmas tree is hung upside. I'm seeing these things on Facebook now. Turn your Christmas tree upside down and you hang it, or you just shave the top half so that the dog can't pull it down. It's like, what if you just trained the dog and you taught the dog rules and then they feared breaking those rules? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as they're not running around fearing you, they understand that you're just a person that enforces the law. That's it. Just don't break the law and you have nothing to fear. Just don't break the rules. Now, this is where it's super important that you're spending time teaching rules and doing all these things first. Because if you're going around enforcing stuff that was never taught, that's a good way to get a dog to fear you entirely and really not understanding what's happening. But if you're very fair and you're just someone who's enforcing the rules, I think you're being a good parent. I think you're being a good dog parent. So fear in dog training, huge difference between a dog fearing you and trying to use fear just to get a dog compliant. When used properly is something that I think we should certainly 100% take advantage of. But make no mistake, when I'm talking about fear, I'm talking about fair and proper use of it. Right? Very big difference, because we always have extremists and people that take things out of context. So that's my take on fear in dog training. I believe that it does have a place in dog training, and hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Go on, get training, make sure your dog is not fearing you, but set rules and make sure that it is clear to your dog that they should not be breaking that. How you go about that, just make sure you're doing it in a fair way. All right? I'll see you guys in the next episode of Blake's Takes.